World of Warcraft is an old game, and since releasing in 2004, a lot has changed, both in terms of gameplay and the world environment, which in many cases looks nothing like it did originally. In 2019, World of Warcraft Classic released, which finally allowed players to live, or in many cases relive, the old version of the game and experience the game in its more imbalanced, unfinished, and to many players, pure state. There was, however, some content of the old Azeroth that was removed so early in the game's history that even Classic, which is based on the last patch of the original game, would not bring it back. In this video, we will take a closer look at two islands whose original versions we didn't get to experience in the Classic version of the game. When the very first players made their way through the zones of Kalimdor in late 2004, they would enter the bleak zone of Dustvalo Marsh. The zone functions as a questing and leveling zone for both the native horde as well as the Alliance players who would arrive on the continent through the harbour in Theramore, which was the largest Alliance city on mainland Kalimdor. While leveling on the beaches of the zone, players would spot a large island far off the coast. In these very early days, there was no real incentive to venture onto the island, but those few who did would find themselves in a high-level zone called the Alcaz Island. The island was laid out as a prison, which is a reference to the Alcatraz Island in San Francisco. While the island didn't hold any quests at the time, players who made it through all the guards who were high-level elites and deep into the underground prison would have their first meeting with the King of Stormwind, Varian. At this time, he was friendly to the Alliance and neutral to the Horde, who could easily solo him. He dropped no loot and wasn't directly related to any quests. I say directly, as there was actually an extensive questline that started in the Cathedral of Stormwind and led the player through wetlands and finally to Dustvalo Marsh in search of the king. The questline eventually ended without the player ever going to Alcaz Island, and when patch 1.9 released, Alcaz Island received an update as it was to play an important role in the legendary questline for the Scepter of the Shifting Sands. Here, the quest NPC and high-level boss, Dr. Weeble, was added to the island, while at the same time Varian was removed. Interestingly, Varian was labeled as the King of Stormwind, just like his son, Anduin, and in this version of the game, he was even wielding the very same staff. After he was removed, players speculated that Varian was part of a questline that ended up being cut from the game. The theory was that the player would help Varian escape by fighting off Naga guards in the prison halls, and then use a targetable airplane which was located just beside the entrance of the underground prison. This does seem unlikely, as the airplane wasn't actually there prior to patch 1.9 when the content relating to Dr. Weeble was added to the island. When the Wrath of the Lich King expansion released, he was added to the game in the form most players are familiar with. He would then stay in Stormwind for many years before he was eventually removed from the game in the Legion expansion, where he died during a battle against the Legion. Alcaz Island also went on to be updated in the Legion expansion, where the island now functions as an armed fortress defending Dr. Weeble. The second island is called Purgation Isle and is located off the coast of Hillsford Foothills. It is currently inhabited by Stormpike dwarves as well as Wargle members of the Bloodfang Pack. The inhabitants of the island offers no quests for Alliance players and serves only as low-level quest NPCs for Horde players to kill while leveling. For players who visit the zone in the classic version of the game, the zone is quite a lot scarier as a fog envelops the zone, which is now filled with high-level elite ghosts that are hostile to both Alliance and Horde players. The island plays a minor role in the questline that allows players to upgrade their basic dungeon set, also known as Tier 0, with a high-quality dungeon set known as Tier 0.5. What a lot of players don't know is that this is not the original version of the island. Prior to patch 1.10, which was released in early 2006, the zone was inhabited by 5 different types of ghost NPCs that were around the same level range as those found in the rest of the Hillsford Foothills zone. There were also 2 named NPCs atop the island, Judge Thelgrim, who was a member of the Stormwind faction and therefore friendly to the Alliance, and Aradas the Damned, who was hostile to both Alliance and Horde players. Neither of them had any quest relation, and the players who ventured onto the island were confused as to why they, or the entire island, was even in the game. To be fair, they were technically relevant for quests, as they dropped the Hillsford human skull, an item needed for the Horde quest called the Souvenirs of Death, but seeing as almost every human NPC in the zone also dropped this item, the quest did little in terms of incentivizing Horde players to swim onto the island, which indeed very few of them ended up doing, which is what made the original version of this island one of the lesser known areas in the game's past. When the island was updated, all 5 of the different NPCs were kept in the game as they became high-level elites, with updated loot tables that now dropped high-level gear as well as the quest item needed for Tier 0.5. On this patch, both of the 2 named NPCs, Arados the Damned and Judge Thelgrim, were removed from the game. While many named NPCs that were removed from the game are brought back to play a role in some capacity during later expansions. After their removal in early 2006, these two NPCs would never see as much as a single mention anywhere within the game. I hope that you found this video interesting, and thank you for watching.